Brady Varman here with Deck Baseball. So today we're going to look at Yordan Alvarez and a little bit of what he does that has allowed him to be so successful this far. Specifically, we're going to look at his pelvis and what makes him special in that regard. So the first thing that we're going to look at is how he actually sets up. So in my opinion, this is the most important part of the swing in terms of our actual swing mechanics, because if we have an incorrect setup, we're going to spend the rest of the swing compensating for that incorrect setup, right? If we set ourselves up into a bad position, that means we're going to be swinging from a bad position right off the bat. So with Alvarez, we can see that his first move here is to start getting into a hinge. So he starts a little bit straight up, right, with a little bit of bend in the legs. But his first move, as he picks that front leg up off the ground, is to get that hinge forward towards the plate, right? And some might call this diving towards the plate, but I think a lot of that is the angle that we have with the camera. Really, he's just getting back to even here, and then once he gets kind of to a max leg lift at this point here, we see him in a hinge position, and then he's going to carry that out during his forward move until he gets in a footplant. He's still in that good hinge position, and then from there he can adjust with lateral tilt or with side bend to whatever pitch location or pitch height he needs to adjust to. So right off the bat, he gets his pelvis in a good position to hinge from and then deliver the barrel from. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about with him. So what I really want to talk about is how his pelvis works as he moves into footplant and the control he's able to have of that. So the biggest thing is as his front foot is moving here into footplant, I want you to be aware of the position of his pelvis and how he's able to hold his hinge. So when he's at this position here, we can see that the pelvis is still tucked kind of like underneath him and then tucked back, specifically in this right glute. And this pitch here is on a off-speed pitch in which he was quite a bit out in front, right? You can see by the time he makes contact, there's really nothing left. The biggest thing is just him now getting barreled to the baseball, which he does, and he ends up putting this ball out of the yard. But we can notice that from swing initiation all the way through contact and even after, he still has this pelvis tucked in and tucked back. So how you can think about this is if you're going down in a deadlift, right, you can either just drop to the floor or you can pull yourself down into the deadlift. Before we actually start bending forward, we're going to preset kind of your butt back. So you want to think about pulling your hamstrings in and down, like as you sit down, almost like you're at the bottom of the squat, where you're activating your hamstrings, pulling yourself in this way. That's going to set up your back to be a little bit more flat, and then you're going to maintain that tension within your hamstrings as you go ahead and pull down. And when you pull yourself down into the deadlift, you're initiating your hamstrings, you're initiating your glutes to kind of create tension on that backside. So there's a difference between just lowering and then pulling yourself into position. So what we see Alvarez able to do is he's really pulling himself into this position, or he's maintaining tension in this front hip here so that it's not losing position. If we were to look from the front, we can see the same thing. So he's in this hinge position here, and then he continues pulling, creating tension throughout this front hip here to maintain that hinge and then initiate rotation. So that's kind of the second piece, is by being able to maintain good pelvic position, that's what initiates rotation, right? That's what initiates kind of that rotational effect, that kinetic chain effect up the rest of the body. Is he's going to be able to tuck in that front side glute, and then we're going to see the torso go, and then that's going to pull through and allow him to deliver the barrel to the baseball. And we can see him do this on multiple different pitches in slightly different ways. So this one is a pretty exaggerated example of him being way out in front, but we see that good pelvis control as he moves into footplant. This one here, we can see he gets it pretty far out in front, a little bit better timing, but he's still a little bit far out in front, but we can still see him tuck that pelvis in here in a foot plant, right? You can think about pulling it down and around in front of you to initiate rotation throughout the rest of the swing. And then we can also see here, this is going to be actually a pitch, a fastball in which he's on time for, right? He's not super early, but we can still see the good pelvic positioning here, and then as he moves into foot plant, he's able to maintain that as he ultimately delivers the barrel to the baseball. So this is something that I think makes him pretty special. It's a pretty difficult thing to do, and it's something that I see a lot of amateur hitters struggle with, is being able to maintain and control that pelvis as it moves into foot plant, because that's what's going to allow him to rotate well and to deliver the barrel where he needs to. So another example of this, or two more, this is one from the weight room right here. So I want you to pay special attention to the pelvis here and how that works in relation to the torso as I'm going through this exercise. Right, if we go back and restart it, and then we kind of go through slowly. So we can see that as I'm pulling the weight back, so I'm making small pulses with the weight, pulling it towards my right shoulder, we can see the pelvis working in opposition. So as the hands go back, the pelvis gets pulled around. And then as they come forward, that gets reversed. Right? So in the case of the swing, what we're doing is it's the same type of thing. That pelvis is getting tucked under and curled, and it's initiating that rotation of the rest of the body. Watch this one more time. Right, so that's a good exercise that you can do to kind of assess how a person's pelvis is working and whether they're able to control it and kind of create this motion in the weight room in a dynamic setting, but not quite as chaotic as a swing. So the last piece that we'll look at is just another view. This one's of Manny Machado. Right, and this is really that portion isolated, is we're going to see the pelvis tuck down and back behind him, and that's going to initiate rotation, right? This is a really good view to see how that initiates rotation of the rest of the body and of the barrel being delivered, as his pelvis tucking down and under.